Okay. Hello, my name is Grace Stewart, and I'm an intern at the Houston Jewish History Archive at Rice University. Today is March 11th, 2022, and I'm here with Martin Cominsky, the president and CEO of Interfaith Ministries. How are you today, Martin?
I'm doing well, Grace. Glad to be with you.
Oh, glad that you're here. All right, so I figured that we could go ahead and start with the basics. So if you could tell us a little bit about where you grew up, different influences on your Jewish life growing up, if there were any, if anything in your childhood or teenage years influenced your future career, anything like that.
Sure. Well, my name is Martin Byron Cominsky, and I was born in Houston, Texas at Methodist Hospital. And I grew up, for the most part, from ages 6 to about 18 in Pasadena, Texas. My mom worked at San Jacinto College as the Dean of Health Sciences. And at that time, they required her to live in the tax-paying community of the college. And so that took us to Pasadena. There were about 40 or 50 Jewish families in Pasadena, believe it or not, although at that time there was not an active synagogue. And so my parents did a lot of carpooling with some of the other families to get us from Pasadena to Congregation Emmanuel and then back again. My school life was primarily in a non-Jewish communal setting. And so I was constantly asked to explain Hanukkah and Passover and all those holidays to my non-Jewish friends. My best friends in my school years were all non-Jewish, but it was well received, and I was quite welcomed, and ultimately became, the junior class president, senior class president, Mr. Pasadena High School. So I think all went well. Having said that, there was a bookstore in Pasadena, the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, that had a big sign on it as you went down Red Bluff Road. And then on Shaver Street was the National Socialist Party that ran Nazi-like messages on a recording. So I'm sure that some of the people that I came into contact with were not favorable to Jewish participation and Jewish life, but that didn't stop me. And fortunately, I was able to go on to University of Houston for a bachelor's degree in journalism and to Southern Methodist University for MBA. And I have, sort of made my career with those credentials and background.
Okay. Would you say that the Jewish-Christian relations in Pasadena were pretty positive when you were growing up?
Yes, I think they were. In terms of race, Pasadena was predominantly a white Anglo community. There became a larger Hispanic community around that, but there were very few African Americans there at the time. So it was welcoming, and there was an active National Council on Christian Jewish Relations that functioned, and B'nai B'rith, for adults at least, functioned as well, although the youth activities were really centered in the Houston area.
Okay. Okay. I don't want to skip ahead too much, but I did remember from our previous meeting, which I thought was interesting, that you were inspired by James Byrd Jr. In some of your later work. So I was wondering if you could say a bit about that.
Okay, so I've had several different wonderful career opportunities. One of them was with the Anti-Defamation League as its regional director. And I served in that role for 16 years. The start of my career there was right after the James Byrd Jr. horrific murder in Jasper, Texas. And the ADL was quite concerned about that and ultimately took a leading role in working with the family, working with the media, working with the legislature, trying to solve the crime, trying to address the hate that uh, was emanating from that and the concerns that were emanating from that, and ultimately to write the language for the creation of the James Byrd hate crime law in Texas, which ultimately passed and is currently the law in our state.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to skip ahead too much. So maybe going back a bit to your time at U of H and SMU, how did you make that transition? Because I know that you didn't go right off the bat from college into the nonprofit world, right? So how did you make that transition between college and then your career at first, and then your life at the ADL, and ultimately at Interfaith Ministries, and what led you to make that decision and that change?
Sure. Well, I was a very active student at the University of Houston, beginning in 1976 when, after I'd graduated from high school. I learned to love the campus very much, and it was celebrating its half-century celebration when I was there. And so I got a chance to work with some of the events that were happening on the campus, got to meet the chancellor of the university. Now it's called the campus president, but met the chancellor and worked very closely with him as a student, just trying to help do some programming during the university's 50th anniversary. And over time, we became friends. Over the 4 years, I worked for him as a student assistant, and he encouraged me to go off to grad school and get an MBA, and then said, when you're done, call me and let's talk. And so after he offered me the job of the director of the alumni organization, I said, I don't think that's quite the right job for this 24-year-old kid right out of college. But he did ultimately offer me the chance to be his assistant. And I worked as an assistant to the chancellor, where I had a wide opportunity to learn about the university, about budgets, about state boards of regents and state legislatures. And it was a wonderful experience. My degree in my MBA from SMU was actually focused on the arts, on an MBA in arts management, which took me to work for the Dallas Symphony first, and then ultimately to come to U of H, and then to work with an organization called Business Volunteers for the Arts, which recruited corporate business people to help nonprofit arts organizations with marketing, planning, accounting, finance, and all those issues. So I became a consultant to arts groups using the degree in the way I had hoped to, until I got selected to be the national director and moved to New York City, where I worked for 5 years and met my wonderful bride, Terry. And we met in New York City at Congregation Rodef Shalom, a classical reform congregation there, and made our way back to Houston after our wedding. So that got me there. Other parts of my career, when Terry and I came back, President Clinton and the AmeriCorps initiative was just being established. And I really liked service and volunteerism and thought that AmeriCorps was a good opportunity for Houston at the time. And I wanted to become its founder and director here. And together with a very good friend and mentor and godfather, Vic Samuels, he helped me start the program, paid my salary for a year, and got off a great program called Serve Houston that while it took an intermission from after about 7 years of its operation, while I was working for the ADL, we're now bringing it back after my ADL experience to make it happen at Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston, thanks to the Samuels family.
Okay, great. And so what year did you start this program originally?
Well, the original program was in 1993.
Okay.
That AmeriCorps was just getting started. I was there for about 5 years, and then it continued on for a couple of years after I moved to the ADL. And for the ADL, I was the Southwest Regional Director, covering from El Paso to Beaumont and kind of all points south. So I had Austin and San Antonio and the Rio Grande Valley and El Paso all in my territory, which, as you know, El Paso is halfway from Houston to Los Angeles. So it was a big portion of the state. And in addition to the work that I did in Houston, I was very proud to open an office in Austin, Texas, which was new to the ADL. And thanks to the Maislin family, Ray Maislin, we were able to get that program started and founded there.
Okay. So with AmeriCorps starting out in Houston, what were some specific challenges that Houston faced at that time that you felt that AmeriCorps could help with?
Well, education has always been a challenge for Houston, despite being the fourth largest city in the nation and being a pretty wealthy community with an economy powered by oil and the Port of Houston and the medical center. Houston has not done well in public education. And so my goal was to bring young people back into the classroom to help tutor and mentor other students in elementary schools. These were high school graduates that had a chance to give back. And so we recruited them. They also ran after school programs in elementary schools in a partnership with the YMCA. And so it built and instilled an experience, a confidence, a commitment to service for young high school students that were then graduating. And then they got about a $5,000 education award to continue their education into college. So it served multiple factors: help the community, help the schools, help the students, the young students, and prepared the AmeriCorps members for a life of service ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how that would be really helpful in this area. So moving a little bit more toward the ADL, so you said that you were supervising areas that were not Houston, right? So are there any ways in which the way that the ADL goes about its mission, is that different in Houston versus the rest of Texas? Are there different issues that Houston may or may not have that aren't shared in the rest of Texas? What's your opinion on that?
Well, there's one ADL globally. We're all offices of an organization that is very well coordinated in its research and its planning and its policy and in all of its writings. And so we work together. My job was to both be an investigator and a conduit by which our national and international organization could learn about Houston and other places in our region, but to also get the wise advice from my expert colleagues in New York City about how to best handle that and what tools we needed and could get to solve problems that I was bringing forward. So it was a very interesting job, part investigative, part community relations, part interfaith relations, and always standing up against prejudice and bigotry. And so, yes, different parts of the state were different, but we were able to sort of report all of that and get a statewide view that I think helped the national office and the planning and the research around fighting anti-Semitism to grow and flourish. Particularly, I'm proud of the No Place for Hate program. The name was created by our Boston ADL office, but Houston really took the idea and made it into a community program with schools participating as No Place for Hate schools. And at some point, we were up to about 400 schools in the greater Houston Southwest regional area. And this was a situation where students in a school signed a pledge, a resolution of respect, to commit that they were going to be respectful students and that they understood how to try to work together, absolutely no bullying, to work together toward fighting any sense of anti-Semitic or anti-gay, all of the prejudices and bigotry that people brought to the school. And our effort was to get people to commit to stop that and to work with their school and their school leaders. And so the students signed it, the faculty signed it, and it just became a symbol of what the school was going to work toward. Were there still challenges in those schools occasionally with bigotry and prejudice? Yes, but there was a foundation there where the school had made the commitment to fight against hate and bigotry, and students as well. And so it was much easier to solve those problems with their understanding of the commitment they'd made and the challenges that their school faced.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's so important to start it young. Um, what did that process look like? If a school wanted to get involved with the No Place for Hate program, did they have to apply, or did you find them? How did that look like?
So they had to apply, and they had to do several things. One was that the whole school, all the students had to agree to sign this resolution of respect that just committed to fighting hate and bigotry and stopping bullying in their school when they could. The faculty administration had to agree to that. And with that resolution, then we would do some various educational programs, whether it was youth summits or special No Place for Hate efforts. We had a resource guide that we provided each year to the schools with new ideas about how to build more understanding and more respect in each school. So it was a great program. It's still working now nationwide. And Susan Shaw, who helped me create this, and I are very proud of the impact that we hope we've made on thousands of students throughout the country to think twice before they express and act on any bigotry in their schools and in their lives.
Yeah, I agree. Is this all grade levels or specifically elementary or?
It was really K through 12. Middle school was our focus because middle school is the focus of a lot of name calling, of bigotry, of bullying. And so some of our greatest work was done in the middle schools, but elementary and high schools were very important as well. The high school programs often delved into Holocaust education and the opportunity for high school students, particularly in Fort Bend ISD, to make some major efforts to be aware of the Holocaust and to fight that from ever happening again. Sadly, in this day, in 2022, the issues of Russia invading the Ukraine harken back to some of the difficult circumstances of the Holocaust and the tragedy of the Holocaust.
Yeah. Yep, it's been a hard year and it's only March, right?
Right.
So what was particular about Fort Bend that you mentioned them specifically?
Well, Fort Bend had a very diverse community. Fort Bend County and the greater Houston area are deemed the most diverse communities in the nation, mainly because there are pockets of all kinds of people and that the distribution of minority interest and involvement in our community is very broad. There may be some that have a larger African American population or a larger Hispanic population. But what's unique about Houston is that all three backgrounds, including Asian Americans as well, that they're pretty evenly split in our city, and that makes the power dynamic much more responsive to people of all backgrounds. And you'll see, in Fort Bend County, there's a lot of people of different background. The county judge now is Hindu and from India. And so it's just was a wonderful place that was living this experience and just needed the support of the ADL to build out a program where people could make a formal commitment to being respectful and have opportunities and tools to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you also mentioned Holocaust education in high schools, and just because that's pretty akin to what I work on here, Rice, and because that's the privilege of being the interviewer, is that I get to ask you, so what does that look like in high schools then? What is your focus? Is your focus on historical accuracy? Is it on respect, all of them? What does it look like?
Well, in Fort Bend County, just to use as an example, I think it was Clemens High School. There was a wonderful instructor there, Michael, who really brought about a full Holocaust memorial experience where young people read about the Holocaust, learned about it, created artwork and symbolism and reflections on the Holocaust. And we always brought in an amazing Holocaust survivor named Walter Case, who survived Auschwitz and was able to get out and got, he was one of the victims of the Holocaust that was greeted by the Americans that were able to free and liberate the different concentration camps. And he was so excited to be liberated after an awful experience and losing so many of his family in the Holocaust. The soldiers brought Hershey bars in, and for people that had not had food or nutrition and were treated so poorly and horrifically during the Holocaust, just getting that candy bar was such a sweet message for him. And so he would go from school to school talking about the Holocaust and his experience. He was emotional about it every time that he did it. He cried, but he always brought some candy bars to remind people that after the Holocaust, there can be sweetness. And he did his part to remind people of that and to create a more living world, a more loving and living world.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine too that going school to school and reliving those memories and the retelling might be pretty draining. So I commend him for doing that work.
It was. He always said to me, I can only do this once in a while because it really, he retold the story time and again of his life, of losing family members, of his horrible experience in it, and then ultimately being saved. He thought it was his sacred responsibility to do it, but it took a toll on him every time he told the story.
Yeah, yeah. Does the ADL ever work with like Holocaust museums, like the Holocaust Museum in Houston here?
Sure, many of the past board chair people of the Anti-Defamation League were involved in the formation of the Holocaust Museum. Marty Fine, who was a chair, was a founder with David Bell and others. So the leadership of the Anti-Defamation League and the Holocaust Museum overlap in significant ways. Slightly different functions, but our work was a little more social action, political and advocacy work to keep current laws and to keep the future open for all humanity. The Holocaust Museum was able to use the history of the Holocaust also as a foundation for reminding people that we're both, one of us, I think, called it No Place for Hate. The other was Stop Hate and not be a bystander, but be, someone that stands with people as an ally. And so our work was often coordinated. We were able to do educational tours for No Place for Hate schools with a great relationship with various Holocaust Museum leaders over the time.
Right, right. And that's no place for hate in any form, right? So I'm curious about if you have any words on the intersection between anti-Semitism and maybe anti-Black racism here in Houston, or the intersection between anti-Semitism and other forms of hate, whether they're related, whether people who are sensitive to the ills of anti-Semitism are also more likely to be sensitive to other hate in other forms?
Sure. Well, Martin Luther King Jr. said that an injustice against one of us is an injustice against all of us. And so we were always reminded that the mission of the ADL is to seek justice and fair treatment for all people, and of course to fight anti-Semitism. But we realized early on that we couldn't just stand for our own people, that we had to stand up for everyone because, as you say, Grace, clearly um, anti anti-humanity, anti-anything is often connected to anti-Semitism. And so there are too many people who harbor these prejudices against the Jews. We've certainly been in leadership and in anti-Semitism because people have always found rumors and stories that somehow have carried forward over the years, untrue, about how the Jews make matzah with blood and kill Christian children, things like the Jews killed Christ. All those things are incorrect, but they are assumptions that are made by people who are not as well educated and choose to be uncomfortable in their differences from others and fight for a homogenous society. And we are a very diverse world. And so those that are racist are never going to be able to find comfort in the world that we live in now. And so the ADL played a really important role in reminding everybody to be able to stand up and to find allies for their communities so we can all live in some degree of harmony and peace in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. I also wanted to ask you, as someone with, I want to say for the record, 16 years of experience with the ADL, right? I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, these rumors, especially in the context of anti-Semitism, there's so many rumors that are centuries old that make no sense, and yet they're propagated. And so I wanted to get your opinion about how do these stereotypes and rumors stay alive even when they're not reasonable? And is there anything in our world in 2022 that makes these stereotypes or rumors or stories more more able to convince people?
Well, I think there's several answers to your question. One is that when things are good, things are better for people that experience prejudice and bigotry. But when anything in the world goes bad, people begin to look for scapegoats and try to find someone to blame. And too often, over too many years, the Jews have been the scapegoat for so many different things. And that has built on its own some sort of momentum that people, that when they get to these moments, they see success among Jewish people, but clearly there's success among all people. There's failure among the Jewish community and failure among others, but sometimes they believe that the media and other big business is controlled by Jewish people. And while there are many Jewish business people, I assure you we don't control it all. And so it just became an easy scapegoat to come upon. The other thing is that, rumors just continue. You can see even in current times, the big lie and some of the things that have happened in the United States over the last few years, that people choose to believe these things because it fits with their sort of understanding of the world. They don't see the breadth and all the different good things that come from people that may live differently, eat differently, act a little differently. So it's easy when you're scared of differences and are unfamiliar with customs of others to just push it away. And that push away often becomes a nervousness and anxiety and is manifest in prejudice and bigotry.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I also wanted to ask you if you had a particular perspective on the Colleyville synagogue situation that we had a couple weeks ago. For anyone who might be watching this in the future, there was a hostage situation at a synagogue in Texas. That luckily everyone survived. But I was wondering, as someone who works to fight anti-Semitism and who works toward interfaith relations, what is your perspective on that situation, and do you think it could have been handled better?
No, I don't think it could have been handled better. And we have a lot of pride in the rabbi there that was able um, to make the most of a horrible situation. I think we're at conflict here because the Jewish community wants to be welcoming. Some of our faith tenets are that we will welcome the stranger, that we will care for the poor and the elderly. And we can't sort of demonstrate that open heart without being open to different possibilities. And I think that Rabbi Charlie, who was the rabbi of that synagogue, um, he saw a person at the door. They asked for tea, they asked for help, and it was his graciousness of wanting to share the abundance that we have with others in need. And little did he know that that person was going to turn out to create terroristic threats and to hold them hostage. I think it's very difficult to sort through that. I've been through lots of training with the FBI, with the Houston Police Department, to watch for that, to see the signals of that. But when it comes down to it, you have to best train for what happens when it does happen. We do our part to try to prevent it to begin with. But Rabbi Charlie was able to get the training that he needed in dealing with active shooters. And he followed the playbook well and ultimately wore the shooter down to where they could make a run and escape that. So it's horrible. It's horrible that we have to think about those things. It's horrible that temple budgets now include hundreds of thousands of dollars for security, for Shabbat police officers, for resources of putting up gates and fences and all these things that we'd very much rather put into our, children's education and to Jewish learning, and not into police officers protecting our lives and our property. But that's what the world has come to at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I went to a Shabbat service last week, and the amount of security there that was increased recently, I was like, God, this is where we're at now. It's disheartening, I think, to say the least. But I'm grateful for your willingness to talk about it. I know it's a difficult
Yeah,
subject.
no, it's sad. Yesterday we had a community gathering of unity for the people of Ukraine that are being horrifically attacked by President Putin in Russia and by the Russian armies. And we had to think as much about the security of having the event and what we needed to do to protect ourselves as much as we were able to reflect on what it was that we were hoping for and praying for, and how we could meditate and find the right support in our bodies, minds, and souls to help us help the Ukrainian people. Just sad that the police are now a box that you have to check off when you do any event in the Jewish community.
Right, right. All right, so to maybe move toward a more maybe a lighter topic, I want to make sure that I get to talking about your time with Interfaith Ministries, as that is where you are now. So maybe a good question to ask next is, what were there any particular projects or initiatives at Interfaith Ministries that kind of drew you from the ADL toward IM, or what led you to make that switch?
Well, I was ready for something new. I got to work under the great leadership of Abraham Foxman at the Anti-Defamation League. We were getting a new CEO and president in Jonathan Greenblatt, who's an exceptionally gifted person, but it just seemed that this was a right time to make the break as the organization was going through its own leadership changes, that I wanted to make that life change for myself. I've always cared about interfaith relations. My experience growing up in Pasadena, Texas, led me to having to deal with that and to trying to understand other faiths, to try to go to church with my friends and understand where they were coming from and how they were growing up, while also bringing them to my bar mitzvah and Jewish things. So it was a comfortable thing for me. And I talked to my first grade teacher just the other day, who's in her 90s now, and she reminded me that even when I was an elementary school student in the fourth grade, that she would ask me to go to other teachers' classrooms and to talk about Hanukkah and to bring the menorah and to, sort of explain the story. And so I didn't really remember doing that, but she said that several times that I came back from the fourth grade and told the story to first graders. So that kind of concern and wanting to share and help people understand our faith led me to believe and want to understand other people's faiths. And IM was the great place to do it, starting first as a Protestant organization, as Protestant charities, then becoming Houston Metropolitan Ministries as it brought Jews and Catholics to the Protestant support group, and then ultimately becoming Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston, where it now incorporates people of all faiths and people of no particular faith, but have a humanistic interest in our world.
Yeah. I know that something that I'm particularly interested in, and I get to ask because I am asking the questions. Something that I thought was interesting about IM was that y'all do a lot of work with refugees, right? And assess refugee needs and help them out, which I think is an issue very close to my heart, and also a very special issue that we have in Texas. So I was wondering if you could describe some of the things that IM does for refugees, how you can help them
Sure,
feel welcome in our country. Yeah.
sure. Well, I was a young teenager when the Soviet Jewry situation was changing, and Russia agreed to let Jews out of the Soviet Union who were, at best inhibited from observing their religion, and at worst, many other kinds of things. And so my family helped sponsor a Russian immigrant family to the United States that came as refugees. And the Jewish Family Service was the wonderful matchmaker that helped, Jewish families from Russia connect with Jewish families in Houston. And to this day, we are still closely associated with the family that my parents chose to adopt. And I think that it's just the wonderful spirit of Jewish life is to, embrace the stranger, to try to give a hand to others, to try to help care for elders. And so it was quite natural to come into an organization that now was the largest senior service organization in the city, providing hot meals and more to 5,000 seniors in the community, and for helping resettle thousands of refugees. In 2021 alone, settling about 2,000 refugees. You know, each of those folks are part of a family, and the family has to be resettled. We have to find apartments. We have to provide health care, provide food allowances so they can survive in the early days before they're able to get a job. We have to find them apartments and housing, and we try to find them sponsoring families or synagogues or mosques or churches that will take that on. So Interfaith Ministries under my leadership became even more active in service and volunteerism and civic service. And we're very grateful to the Vic Samuels family, who gave us a very important gift to not only remember Vic's legacy, but to create that legacy in service, whether it's casual volunteering, AmeriCorps, national service, corporate volunteering, all of those things we do in Vic's name to try to engage the community. We've grown during my leadership. I have a lot of people to be grateful for that, an excellent board of directors and a terrific staff, but we've grown significantly and built new programs in the last 5 years of my leadership. And I'm hopeful for another good 5 or 6 years ahead.
Yeah. I think that's what's really great about interfaith organizations, is that no matter if you're Christian or Muslim or another faith or no faith at all, we can all argue about theology and like get into the details, but at the end of the day, we all believe in helping the stranger, like helping the needy, and those basics I think are really beautiful, and it's really great when people of different backgrounds can come together. Let me see.
I think that's, you know, I'm not a religious scholar or theologian, but my interest in interfaith relations is helping bring service to people and bring people to service for others. And so it's wonderful in this organization that we're not debating theology. We are trying to understand people's customs and beliefs. We're trying to share that with others. We have a welcome to our house tour where we visit houses of worship, either in video or with real people. And we get to expose people to the other worship and belief experiences of others. But in the end, we all kind of find the strength of shared beliefs in the service that we want to do for others. And this organization provides lots of opportunities, whether it's refugees, whether it's working with the elders, whether it's working with animals and the pets of elders, or whether it's working for volunteers that want to commit their time to do something more for the city of Houston. And that's very fulfilling for me.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could say a few words also about, and this is an eternal problem with many organizations, and so I understand it's complex, but I wanted to get a sense of whether IM deals with people like the ADL, if they deal with people who are not predisposed to believe in the equality of religions and the sacredness of all human beings, whether you encounter difficult people who are opposed to to IM's beliefs, and how, I mean, you can't force them, right? So how do you persuade them through kindness? How can you maybe change their mind?
Well, our building has a illuminated banner across the whole front side of it that has respect in 13 different languages. And so we really try to promote that. We really try to promote that understanding and learning about others is the best way to build respect for them. And so we do things like the house of worship tours to show people different customs and rituals. We have healthy debates and dinner dialogues and other kinds of dialogues between people of different faiths. We have lectures where one or more religious leaders will talk about an issue of current interest through the lens of their own faiths. So it's all about trying to build understanding. It's really ADL that focuses on that every day. And they do this work in the schools, and they do work with law enforcement where they're training police and FBI and other folks about people of different faiths, and trying to make sure that everyone understands differences in faith and why, if a, policeman offers somebody a ride on Shabbos and they don't take it, what is that message? And, they're in our Orthodox Jewish community in Houston. I think was really interesting early on that the police department didn't understand some of our customs and rituals, and found it difficult to do community policing in a neighborhood where they didn't understand those traditions. And so a big part of my work and the work of my working partner, Jody Bernstein, has been really trying to help law enforcement understand those differences and not make assumptions based on mainstream Christianity that everyone is, in the same system of beliefs.
Right. Okay. Are there any specific, like, do you have a favorite project that you've worked on in IM? A favorite contact you have at a synagogue or a church or a mosque? I want to talk about the favorites.
I see. Well, some of my favorite projects over the years, certainly No Place for Hate was a fundamental transformational activity for school students, and people acknowledging that they were going to be aware of their own biases, that they would go to workshops and programs to learn about that, to read about it, and to try to be just a more thoughtful, careful person to others because of that understanding. I think at IM, really what we're doing now in the area of civic service and trying to show people that one of the best ways to break down the barriers of different faiths, even of socioeconomic divisions, of racial divisions, is to stand side by side with folks that share a willingness to help someone else, and find that when we do that together, we have our best chance at building the kind of respect that all of us want. I'm fortunate as a former staff member of the ADL to have been very active in the Jewish community and to get to meet almost all the rabbis in our community, although new ones come often. But while I grew up at Congregation Emmanuel and had wonderful years there, and now I'm a part of Shema Kolenu as well as Congregation Emmanuel, I find that my rapport with all the rabbis in town gives me great comfort, allows me to walk into any synagogue and feel good and welcomed, even to do so in Christian and Muslim and Buddhist and Sikh and all kinds of communities, that I have this wonderful opportunity to know people in all those faiths and to feel at least comfortable walking in and participating and supporting the diversity of faiths in our community.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So for our last couple of minutes, I saved, I think, my favorite question for last. So we here in Houston, we have a diverse community. I love Houston, but we've got a lot of issues too. And so I was wondering if you were able to tell the whole community of Houston what we can do to create a more ethical, inclusive, pro-diversity society here in Houston. What would be your advice on how to do that?
Well, I think Houston, as the most diverse city, has learned a set of skills for people to thrive in this community. There's still too much difference between socioeconomic groups. And in some places, as is often said, that the weekends are the most divided days of our society because the Muslim, the Christian, the Jewish, the different traditions celebrate differently and sort of congregate together, whether in person or now by Zoom. And so uh, there's just always that sense of if we could bring more understanding and unity when we're together in prayer and meditation worship, that we could make the difference. And one of the projects the ADL used to do were pulpit exchanges, where a Christian minister might go to a Jewish synagogue, or a Muslim imam would come to a Christian church or something, and just give a chance to give a message to the congregation of learning, of teaching, and of respect. And those are always wonderful things. So I think we just have to keep working at it. Having thoughtful, progressive mayors that have encouraged that has helped us a lot, whether it's having African American mayors or having gay and lesbian mayors. They have provided openings for understanding of people of all backgrounds and have reminded our community that we can all live together, that we can all lead together, and ultimately we'll make Houston a much better place when we do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for speaking with me today.
Great, great. Well, pleasure to speak with you. And I have had a wonderful past in the Jewish community, and I look forward to continuing to try to pay it forward, to work and help our community and others be a great place to live.